Hello, all, and welcome to a new episode of the Horror Countdown Podcast. I'm your host, Don Anelli, and tonight, for my guest, I'm joined by filmmaker Charles Lincoln.
Hey, what's up?
Hi, thank you for joining me. It's great to have you on board.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's nice for me to be able to come on here and talk about some various films and stuff.
Absolutely. So, for tonight's feature, because I figure this would be kind of in your wheelhouse based on your filmmaking career, we decided to look at our 10 favorite vampire performances. So, before we get started, just one little caveat here. We're including performances, so I'm allowing the same character multiple roles.
Mm, mm.
So, for example, if Bela Lugosi showed up on your list from the original, or whether he played it in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, I would have allowed it.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I don't have any Draculas on my list.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
just throwing a name out there. Just
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But
that's
um, but yeah, no, it's interesting because you asked specifically for portrayals instead of films. So there's I think about two from films I don't actually like, but I think they have a great vampire performance in them.
right. Yeah,
So it's we'll get to those when we get to those, but
yeah,
I have a very interesting list. I also have some honorable mentions.
yeah. I managed to come up with 15, and then I whittled it down to 12, and then I just selected my 10. I just selected 10, so I have two or three honorable mentions that I can name off.
Hmm.
So, let's dive into the list, shall we? Let's hear our number 10.
All right. Well, my number 10 is going to be Barlow from Salem's Lot, the miniseries version from the 70s. It was my first experience with vampires, pretty much. It was the first time I ever saw one, and he had that kind of Nosferatu look going on with him. And it was really interesting, to see this whole, the whole story is basically about this kind of, I'm from, New York City, so it's kind of like a suburban town and stuff, kind of slowly becoming vampires once this, eccentric old person moves into the town and you find out they're a vampire. And they just kind of change the whole landscape of the place. And I always found that very fascinating, especially as a little kid, seeing this. It's actually interesting because Midnight Mass, which I just saw on Netflix, is pretty much the same plot. Um, which is probably why I think a lot of people consider that like a Stephen King story that people haven't, that Stephen King didn't write. But it's definitely got a lot of Salem's Lot in it. And Salem's Lot was definitely my first experience with vampires. I grew up with horror. As a little kid, I used to see The Omen and Exorcist and all that. But first vampire film was definitely Salem's Lot, and first vampire was definitely Barlow.
Yeah, he's on my list for sure. I absolutely agree. I love the look. I love his makeup. I love just the sinister ruthlessness that he has. I mean that stare is just absolutely spine chilling, especially with the makeup and the glowing eyes,
Oh
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
those fangs protrude. I mean that is just absolutely bone chilling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I remember one of the things I loved about Salem's Lot as a little kid was the scene of the little boy outside the window
Yeah.
with the glowing eyes and stuff. And there's a little kid that stuck with me so much.
Yeah, that was definitely one I remember when I first saw that. That was one of the big defining images. But yeah, I mean, I'll mention Barlow when he comes up because he made my list. But
Hmm.
yeah, my number 10 is Jerry Dandridge in Fright Night.
Oh, okay. The original Fright Night, right, from the
Yeah,
80s, right?
the
Yeah.
original, yeah, the original version. The Chris
Yeah.
Sarandon,
The Twist Sarandon. Yeah,
the
yeah.
Chris Sarandon one. Yeah, I love the way that he comes off. The suave, sophisticated, kind of smooth ladies man kind of a vampire. He's
Hmm.
he's never, stressed. He's always in control of the situation. He's always looking for a way out that, if he just plays his cards right, he's going to get there. I love the way he comes off. And one of the better things I love about it is the trivia that you find out after the fact. In every single scene of his, he's eating a piece of fruit to
Hmm.
emphasize his vampire bat origin.
Hmm.
I rewatched it knowing that bit, and it's absolutely noticeable, but you never realize it when you don't know that.
Oh yeah, see that's crazy. I didn't even know that. I've only seen
Oh,
the original Fright Night once.
okay,
Um,
yeah. So yeah, try to rewatch that, and when he's on screen the first few times, try to watch him because he's always got a piece of fruit in his hand. He'll either be cutting an apple
mhm.
or he'll be like juggling like a fruit or a peach or something, and he'll be like snacking on a banana. So he'll always have a piece of fruit with him.
Oh wow,
And
that's
yeah,
interesting. Yeah, I
yeah,
have him in my honorable mentions.
okay, yeah. Like I said, it's not necessarily like a frightening aspect of him, but it's just a fun little quirk that I like because it was something that, if I remember right, Sarandon brought it up to director Tom Holland, and he agreed with it. But yeah, I think it's a fun little quirk, and it like I said, it's not the main part of why I like him, but it's a fun little trivia tidbit that I've always really found it interesting, and it definitely plays itself out on rewatches. So if you can, try to rewatch it with that, and I think you'll be pretty surprised.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed the movie except I hated Evil Ed. Evil Ed
Oh,
just
thank
annoyed
God, I'm
the
not the
hell
only.
out of me. Yeah,
I don't understand the appeal with him. I know the community seems to love him. He just grates on my nerves, like that
yeah,
screaming, the whining, and it's like, why did you leave me? And it's like
yeah. No,
he
Evil Ed
sounds
is
like.
just annoying.
Yeah,
Like
I
it.
will agree. I like the way that the remake handled it better.
Hmm. Oh,
The remake
definitely.
the remake
Evil Ed is
handled.
definitely better in the remake, but
Yeah,
I
that's
think.
one of the few things I like that the remake does better. But
Hmm.
yeah, I personally I agree. I've never seen the appeal of him.
Oh yeah, yeah. But no, Chris Sarandon as Jerry is great in the original. And that's the thing. Like the original is not. I hated Evil Ed so much it wouldn't be in my top 10 vampire movies if I was making a list of that, just because of Evil Ed. Everything
Yeah,
else in the movie is really fun, but Evil Ed just is such a negative point to me. I don't understand. I don't understand why people like him,
yeah,
but
same here.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's a good number 10 actually.
yeah.
Um, so
So
yeah, so
eh,
my number nine, if you want to go to number nine, is okay. So this is a movie I don't like. I don't like this movie, but I love this vampire depiction. It's Valak from John Carpenter's Vampires.
hmm,
Only because, and as I said, I don't like the movie, but I love how just primal and destructive and like a force of nature Valak is in this film. You can shoot him point blank in the face and it's not going to kill him. He runs after the pickup truck that Daniel Baldwin and James Woods are trying to get in. And he just, when there's that scene in the motel with the room full of vampire hunters, and, which I think, by the way, I think is a horribly edited scene, but him himself, I think, is a really interesting portrayal of a vampire. I kind of like the idea of vampires as just these forces that you can't like mess with, that will just that you can't just shoot in the face or whatever or kill them the way a normal person would be killed. I love that, and there'll be a couple more examples like that on my list as we go through it. But
hmm.
I'm
So
not I'm not a fan of that movie, especially. Oh my god, I wanted to break John Carpenter's slide guitar when I first saw it. But it's I think Valak, even if I don't like the movie itself, I think Valak is a great depiction of a vampire.
so yeah, I actually had him down on my final 15 for that very reason. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he's easily the best part of that movie, and like that's not even really much of a debate. I mean, I can probably maybe count the special effects in that for the vampire gore and
Oh
stuff,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Like when he
but
tears the guy in half and stuff. That's
oh,
such
that
a good
was
effect. Yeah.
yeah. So, but I'm saying, yeah, Valak is easily the best part of that movie, and he's pretty memorable. But I'm kind of like you. I'm not a huge fan of it. So when I came down to like really defining what I wanted, he kind of fell off. But he made it to my final 15 because he is easily the best part of that film. So
Yeah, yeah. No, he's the only part I like of that film.
yeah,
Even James Woods, who I don't normally dislike, I just didn't think he was great in that film. James Woods just kind of walks in that like with that I don't care attitude, and that doesn't really. I understand that's
yeah,
supposed to be because he's like a badass vampire hunter and stuff, but
yeah.
it it
I would have preferred a more world weary, if not like
yeah,
sarcastically disdainful. Yeah,
exactly.
I think he played that the wrong way. World weary, but still like dedicated to the job instead of sarcastically disdainful. I think
Hmm.
that's how I would have preferred that character to go.
Exactly. And like that's like I said, I don't like that movie, but I do like Valak as a vampire.
Yeah.
Just separating him from that film.
All right, cool. So my number 9, and this is kind of one of the reasons why I said portrayals instead of portrayals instead of films. So I went with Christopher Lee in Dracula, Prince of Darkness.
Hmm.
This is the second one, or I should say the third in Hammer's Dracula series, but it's Lee's second performance. And this is the one that stuck with me the longest because this is easily the most feral, vicious, just absolutely animalistic vampire I've ever seen.
Mm.
He is just an absolute force of nature in this. I mean, the second he emerges, he just commands everything, and it's just instinct. Like he moves without hesitation, and he doesn't say a word. I mean, I know there's a lot of stories about why he did that, and I mean, we can discuss and debate that until we turn blue. But in terms of a pure performance, it is just savage and animalistic, and it really, really stuck a nerve with me when I first saw it. And it's one of the reasons why I think so highly of the film because other than that, I think the film is kind of sluggish and not. It's more one of the few misfires in the Dracula series.
Hmm.
I think it's a bit too slow for its own good,
Hmm.
but his portrayal in that thing is amazing, and I absolutely love it. I think it's absolutely one of the defining moments in the series.
Mm. I must admit I've never seen it. I've only seen one Christopher Lee Dracula film, and it was I guess the original one he did. And I wasn't like I never saw the other ones, so I from what you're telling me that makes me want to see it.
Yeah, this
But
is
even if it's a slower film, yeah.
yeah. I think out of this series, I think this will probably be the one that you like the most. The one I like the most is the follow up to this one, Dracula has risen from the grave, because
Hmm.
that one's actually a little bit speedier.
Hmm.
That one, I kind of like that one, but I don't really like what they do with Dracula with Lee in that one because he kind of just disappears once he gets resurrected.
Mm.
So it's kind of a weird thing in that he's around, he revolves around the plot line, but he's not a central figure.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah. I'm definitely interested to see that though.
yeah, like I said, I really like the Dracula series. I actually kind of like it a little bit more than what Universal did with their vampire films,
Hmm.
which are still really good. But I've always just kind of slightly given the nod to Hammer in this regard for their series. But
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely if you can watch this one, I really think you'll like it. I think this one would probably be maybe your favorite of the series.
All right. Yeah, no, I'll definitely check that out. I'm always so that's one of the things I love about listening to your podcast is not so much films I've already seen, but hearing about stuff that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
Like when you were talking about Canadian films, there was one, and I wrote it down so I could try to check it out. That I was, like stuff like Pontypool I've seen. Like speaking of vampire films, I told you about how when Ariel from Teresa and Alice and Ariel Hope was so excited to tell me about Pontypool. And but I had already seen it, and she was super disappointed by that. But then there was one film you spoke of, and I don't know the title offhand, but I wrote it down. and I plan on checking it out. So I think that's one of the things I kind of love about these top 10 lists is not so much reinforcing stuff that people might have seen, but exposing them to stuff that they haven't seen, so that there's kind of this new, kind of horror stuff that they can check out.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I mean that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to do it. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, thanks. I'm definitely glad it's doing its job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next character I'm going to go with, I don't know how many people have actually seen this film, and it's very slow paced, but I really enjoyed Saoirse Ronan as Eleanor Webb in Byzantium.
Hmm.
Like kind of like there's kind of this captain dude who, with syphilis who rapes her and breaks the Brethren Code, and she's made into a vampire by Gemma Arterton's Clara Webb. And they're hunted, and it's kind of what I love about it is that it's more slice of life than anything. It's not like an arc more. It's more of just like these are vampires living through different time periods and stuff. And I kind of like how she tries to be a normal teenager as much as she can while still having to actually, kill people and feed and stuff.
Hmm.
And I think that that's kind of to me, that was an interesting portrayal.
Yeah. I've seen it maybe once or twice, so I'm not like overly attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember liking it when I first saw it because I saw it around when it came out, maybe a year or two later.
Yeah.
But I did remember liking it. It's just I've never really gone back and revisited it. So
Yeah, I have a film like that in my honorable mentions. I had Catherine Deneuve as Miriam Blaylock in The Hunger, which I remember I liked, but I've only seen it once, so I don't remember anything.
right.
I didn't put her on my list because I'm like, I don't remember what I liked about her.
Yeah, there was a couple of films on mine that when I was whittling down the big list down to 15, there was a few I was like, yeah, I have this movie rated highly, but I don't know why. So it's one of those where it's like I can like move it off for ones that I'm
Yeah,
a little bit more comfortable or familiar with. Yeah,
yeah,
I've
exactly.
got I've got, there was a few films like that when I was whittling it down to 15 where I was like, yeah, you're rated highly on my notes, but I don't know why. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Like I can't tell you what I actually liked about Catherine Deneuve in The Hunger, but I know I liked it. I know when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is a good movie.
yeah.
And I know I had written a scene in Teresa and Allison based off just Bajas playing in the club in The Hunger because I wanted to do a kind of a tribute to it that we ended up not doing because the band I could never get their schedule together. But I've still only seen it once, so I don't remember exactly what I liked about Catherine Deneuve. So she ended up in my honorable mentions instead of my top 10.
Hmm,
So what's
nice.
your so what's your number 8?
All right, so my number 8 is William Marshall as Blackula.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this one. This is maybe not necessarily an off the wall pick, but if you've seen this one, and I'm specifically referring to the original more so than the sequel,
Hmm.
he elevates this thing to a fine art more so than I think anybody should have ever done for this kind of material.
Oh, definitely,
Because
definitely.
it's such a campy, goofy, just you know, for those that don't know, he's a African prince that has been turned into a vampire by Dracula, christened Blackula because of racism issues, and basically left alive inside of Dracula's castle, who is then reincarnated in the modern day by a pair of grave robbers who are looking for a piece of furniture to put into their house and letting him loose on society. But in the midst of his rampage, he stumbles across this woman who is the reincarnation of his bride from when he was still alive. This is cheesy as hell. this, this is corny and just absolutely. it just screams. This screams 1970s from the
Yeah.
look,
Oh, definitely,
fashion.
definitely.
Yeah, and it's a straight up blaxploitation film, so it's all of that, jive talking kind of nonsense that goes on in that time period.
And
But yet when he comes on screen, it it's hard to describe, but he's stately, composed. He has this authoritativeness to him that just absolutely commands the room, and he turns it into far more terrifying film than what it should be, because he looks like the kind of person that is going to just whip your ass from here to New York and not think twice about it, but you've got to give him a reason to. He's that kind that's going to just own the he's just going to own you in a fight, but he's not going to be the one to make the first move. You're going to be the one stupid enough to do it. And I don't know why, but it's just always stuck with me. And he elevated that, this schlocky kind of a B movie into something far more than it should be, and I absolutely respect that.
oh, I definitely like. I totally agree with you. I remember when I saw Hobo with a Shotgun, and Rutger Hauer was just killing it in what would normally be like just this campy B type movie. It reminded me of that because he is definitely elevating the material. Definitely 100% elevating the material in there. And that's what I remember thinking of when I saw Hobo with a Shotgun, where Rutger Hauer is just acting like he's in a serious, film about the plight of the homeless and stuff, when it's really like a trauma film, basically. Um,
Right.
and that's what that reminded me of was Blackula. So yeah, I definitely agree with you on that.
Nice.
Mm. So my number 7 is going to be John Amplas. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but John Amplas as Martin from George Romero's 1977 film called Martin. What I loved about this film is that Martin is more of a serial killer who might just think he's a vampire than actually being a vampire or not. And I loved how ambiguous it made it. I kind of love how he's just kind of this creepy fucking dude who I'm sorry, I don't know if I can curse or not.
I could just slap an edit. I can just slap an E label on this. I'm fine.
Okay, great, great. I'm sorry, I'm a New Yorker, but but I love how he's just this creepy kind of guy who you don't know if he's a vampire or he might just be just a creepy serial killer who thinks he's a vampire. And I love that about him. That the movie is very ambiguous about it. It never really answers the question. Because he's like injecting people and doing all that sort of stuff and everything. But Martin was something that like I loved how it kind of took the vampire genre and stripped it of all the supernatural elements, which I love. Don't get me wrong, I love the supernatural elements. I absolutely love the supernatural elements, but it was interesting to me to take a vampire film and strip them of them and have it be a question if there's even any supernatural elements whatsoever. Martin could just be a serial killer who thinks he's a vampire. But I really, really love his performance in there. I think that John Amplas is just kind of there's something unsettling about him. And I don't know, do you know if he ever did anything else? Because I don't recall ever seeing him in anything
He
other than Martin.
he's the dock officer patrolling the he's the dock officer in the Romero's Dawn of the Dead. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he also had a role in Creepshow.
Okay.
I think he kind of stayed within the Romero family.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
in terms of other roles, nothing is really sticking out.
Yeah,
Um,
because I don't remember seeing him in other things. So
yeah,
I
like I
guess
said, I like I said, I know he kind of stayed around the Romero family. Maybe he helped out around the scenes more so than actually on camera.
yeah, yeah.
I would probably imagine that, but
Yeah, Chelsea and I are supposed to do our on our podcast. We're supposed to talk about Dawn of the Dead and then its remake. So I guess I'll be looking out for him then. Um,
Yeah, yeah, he's the dock officer in the very beginning of Dawn. He's the one that
mm,
gives them the boat. He's the one that gives them the boat.
okay, okay. I'll definitely be looking out for him then. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that he's either he's right there on the beginning when they take the boat.
Mm. All right, awesome. So what's your number 7, Don?
Right, my number 7 is Blade.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
I have
this
another
is.
Blade character in my list, by the way, but we'll get to
Oh, okay, cool.
that.
I may have an idea, but I'm referring to Wesley Snipes in the original.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, he- Kind of a stretch because he's still technically a half human, half vampire.
Technically a
But
Dom Pierre, yeah,
yeah,
I believe is
yeah,
the term.
the Dhampir, yeah. Technically, that's maybe stretching it a bit, but he's still half, so I'm counting it. But yeah, ass kicker supreme. Probably the one time where I actually don't mind the hunter having equal, if not superior, skills.
Hmm.
Um, Perfect choice for it. He looks the part. He fits the leather, so to speak.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. The scenes with him where he's just absolutely beating the crap out of him just looks so much fun. And you still see hints of that vampire nature where he just stands around and he just glares at you. And you
Yeah.
know that he's got that urge still inside of him, but he's still human enough to control it. But there's always that don't fuck with him look.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I love Blade. Blade. I'm actually really interested to see what Marvel's going to do with Blade. Because Blade is just such an awesome character, and
Mhm.
I love all three of the Blade movies. I know a lot of people hate Blade Trinity, which is not a great movie, but my honorable mentions, I actually put Parker Posey's Danica Kane in there
Mm.
because I love, like, I number one, I love Parker Posey, but I love her character in that film. The Blade films are very underrated. Even Blade 3 is not a great film.
Three is the one that I'm the least familiar with. I've probably seen it maybe once or twice just because it never left an impression.
Mhm.
But I absolutely love one and two.
Yeah.
One and two are so much fun.
Oh yeah.
And
Well, like two,
two,
two is I think you can tell Guillermo del Toro experimenting with stuff that he would later use in other things.
yeah, I absolutely agree. I that's probably like the hidden gem in his catalog that nobody
Hmm.
knows. Yeah, that's one of my favorite films he did, and I have a lot of fun with it. It's definitely one that I think kind of slipped under the radar just because I think the third one just soured everyone's opinions on the
Yeah.
franchise.
Yeah. I mean, even Wesley Snipes. If you listen to like Parker, not Parker. What am I talking about? Patton Oswald. If you listen to him talking about how Wesley Snipes, when like all of the scenes that aren't played directly are his body double. Even Wesley Snipes didn't really seem to be into Blade 3, but I still think Blade 3 still has some fun elements to it, even if it's the least of the Blade trilogy. Honestly, and here's the thing I'll say, I actually really like the Blade TV show. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but the Blade TV show was actually not even bad.
I haven't ventured into the episodes. I saw the pilot movie, so I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
that's. I'm saying I don't know if that's like the first two episodes combined together into a feature
Mm-hmm.
length, or is that what it is? It's like the first two episodes into a feature length, or
It
was
might
that
have been.
a?
It might have been. I mean, I only
Because
saw it when it came out, but I remember it was not. I remember watching it and being like, how I
yeah,
expected to hate it, and I really liked it. And I really thought it would have.
I did.
I
Yeah, I
thought it
was.
was going to be bad, and it was actually really really fun.
Yeah, I definitely I thought the same thing. I was like, okay, this isn't going to be good. Like, why am I wasting my time with this? But for whatever it was, the TV movie, House of Cthulhu,
Mm-hmm.
or I think that's how you say it. Um, Whatever that one is, like I said, I'm not sure if that's episodes one and two combined together, or if that's an actual different pilot to sell the show that just happened to be a feature length film. I'm not. I don't know because I never followed up on it, but
Mm-hmm.
I definitely found it better than I thought it would. And
Yeah. Yeah, and as the
Yeah.
show went on, it was actually really good. It was it was one of those things that I was kind of disappointed when they canceled it after season 1.
Mm. Yeah. I wasn't. I wanted to go back to it, but I never really had the chance because it was canceled so quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm definitely down to track it down and see more of that because I do remember liking it, but it's been a while. But
Yeah, no, as soon as I heard that Wesley Snipes was not going to be played and it was a guy, I believe his name, it was a rapper. I think his name was like Sticky Fingers or something. And I was like, oh man, that's going to suck. But no, it was actually really good. And I was very surprised by that. But yeah, no. So are we on number 6 now,
right,
or?
yeah, we're number 6.
Okay, the number 6 is going to be Marlowe, which is Danny Huston and 30 Days of Night, directed by David Slade. I really, I love the idea of vampires as predators. I love the idea of vampires as just like, and that's one of the things I loved about this film is they had the teeth. They were probably my favorite vampire teeth, where they were just like sharp, like shark teeth almost. They were just, you see them and they're predators, but these are not vampires you'd want to be. These are vampires that are like hungry coyotes outside of, like when I lived in LA for briefly. Everyone knows me as a New Yorker, but I lived in LA briefly. And I remember my dad telling me, make sure the cat's in by 6 because the coyotes will eat it. And I thought he was joking at first, but then every night you'd have the coyotes come into town, and they'd howl, and they'd just like take anybody, and every morning you'd see like, have you seen this pet? Because the coyotes would just come into town and eat them. And I love the idea of the vampires like that in 30 Days of Night, which not really a great film, but I love the idea of the vampires coming into this town where it's night for 30 days and they just kill all of the residents except for these few characters that we follow through the film. And Danny Huston as Marlowe is just, like they have this vampire language that they speak and everything, and he's just brutal. He's just this dark leader of this like pack, and there's really no other way to describe it, as it's just like an animal, a pack of rabid animals that are going to go and devour everyone in town, and I love that.
Yeah, that's why it made my list too. I kind of grouped them together as all of the vampires, but I definitely singled him out on my list because he's on there. So,
Mm-hmm.
but my number 6 is Gary Oldman as Dracula.
Ah,
So, I'm much more interested in him when he's the suave romantic figure, kind of like how Jerry was in Fright Night.
yeah,
I don't really like him as the regal vampire bat.
yeah,
It's I mean, it's hard to say that's actually him. I mean, that looks more like the makeup department rather than him actually doing anything underneath all that latex.
yeah,
But the rest of him, he's fantastic. I mean, Gary Oldman, no surprise, but yeah, I love the way he portrays in this. Again, not necessarily a good movie. It's big Hollywood overblown blockbuster. A lot of issues there. We'll forgive the elephant in the room because that's not necessarily what we're talking about. But
yeah, yeah. I remember not liking this film because at the time I did not see Keanu Reeves as a serious actor. I
yeah,
saw him as Bill and Ted,
yeah, that's
and it was
kind of the elephant I was referring.
yeah, it was just like, and he's done a lot of serious work since, but I just saw him as like, whoa,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah,
kind
that's
of the
not. Yeah, that's
I
yeah,
didn't
that's kind of.
I didn't see him. I've read Dracula the novel from Bram Stoker, and I did not see him as Jonathan Harker. I just was like, why is Keanu Reeves in this film?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Gary Oldman does a great performance in that. You know, um, I think kind of him with the white hair and stuff, and
That big bouffant wig that he
yeah,
has.
that kind of put him off my list because there was,
Oh, that was the part of him that was the part I liked about it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Huh.
I don't know. Like I said, I wasn't really into a lot of it. I think, I don't know. I think maybe it just might have been an example of a mainstream actor. I mean, a mainstream director trying hard to do a vampire film, but being afraid to really take chances with it. And maybe that's why
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah. I definitely agree. That's kind of some of my issues with it is that it feels more artistic than its genre intentions would probably allow it to be.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but Gary Oldman's performance is great. But Gary Oldman's always great. I have never seen a bad Gary Oldman performance, except for like Batman versus Superman or whatever. But that's because he has like 3 lines or something like that in that film.
Yeah.
But but yeah. So my number 5. Okay, I'm sure this is gonna make me lose all my street cred here. But I'm sorry, Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Because oh my God, like he just was this cool Billy Idol-esque vampire. And he just was, it made me like the show to kind of see this alternate, we're so used to like vampires having this kind of gothic aesthetic to them, and you had this kind of more punk vampire and stuff, with the English accent and stuff, and there's a whole prophecy in the second season, and he just kills the person talking about the prophecy and stuff like that, and just I loved it. And I was not a fan of the show until Spike came in. Everyone kept telling me, "Oh my God, you watch the show, you're gonna like Spike," because I remember watching the show at first and hating it. And then when Spike came on, I was like, oh my God, I can relate to this character because, I come from like, punk and metal and, being a musician and all that kind of underground scenes and stuff. And kind of the character of Spike was just what made me love that show. Um, and as I said, I kind of loved, and even him kind of when he became like a lovesick puppy or whatever later on in the show, I kind of loved that he still had this whole kind of dark backstory to him, that he was just this kind of like, vampire who didn't give a shit and just kind of broke the rules of what you were supposed to do. So I I will always have a soft spot for Spike in my heart, from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh yeah. I'm not the most overly familiar with the show.
Mhm.
I remember watching it with my sister because
Yeah,
that was one of the things my sister and I did.
yeah,
So I think we watched maybe a couple. We watched at least 2 or 3 seasons.
yeah.
I could not name anything to save my life.
Let me tell you, that first season was awful. I wa-
Uh,
I remember seeing it at first and being like, "Oh my God, this is the worst show ever." And then later on, when I became a fan of the show, I tried to go back and like maybe I just didn't appreciate the first season. No, it's bad. It's a
okay.
bad season.
So the only thing I do know for sure is that her and Angel were boyfriend and girlfriend, and then he lost his soul and became like the bad guy that she had to kill.
Yes,
So
yes, that's
I
season
remember.
2. Yeah.
Okay, I remember seeing that because I remember that plot vividly, obviously.
Mhm.
But like I said, other than that, I can't say much more. I I understand the appeal. I I genuinely do because I do remember enjoying the times me and my sister watched it. It was just one of
Mhm.
those where it's like when we kind of grew apart, like during the summer, we were like, okay, well, we're gonna go watch it, and then we had others, we had our own thing, and we kind of just like grew out of it, so we like stopped watching it.
Yeah.
But I do remember vividly like the 2 or 3 seasons we watched. I did remember enjoying it. It was just I watched it because of her, and then we kind of grew apart, and we,
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't gone back to revisit it, but yeah, I can definitely see the appeal for that one. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. But speaking of appeal, my number 5 is Ingrid Pitt as Count Mircalla in The Vampire Lovers.
Ooh. Ooh. Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, another kind of under the radar performance. I think as heterosexual men will probably appreciate some aspects of the performance more than others. I'm not gonna lie, that's definitely an appealing factor there. But The other thing I love about this is the fact that her maturity and just the absolute, just like I said, just that calm, calculating, I'll just take care of it, don't worry about it kind of a thing.
Mhm.
I love the fact that that just, as a vampire, just translates so well because you just know that they're setting someone up.
Oh, definitely.
And like I said, that's like the one thing I love the most about a lot of these vampires is just that calm, collected, just I'll take care of it, don't worry about it kind of a thing. And here, because she's playing off, like the other girls, and yeah, okay, some of that's a little, again, heterosexual appeal, I'm not gonna lie, but in terms of her performance, it just makes her seem that much more calculating and deadly just because she knows where her targets are and she knows how to manipulate them to her will,
Mhm.
and she's doing it in such obvious manner that they can't tell, and just falling deeper into her trap that the more that the film goes on, and the more that the family's oblivious to the fact that all of a sudden they're becoming undone because of her arrival, and they're getting sick, they have these strange marks, they're just not feeling themselves, and it's all because of her. I really like the way that comes out in the film, and it's all because of because of her. So
Oh yeah, no, definitely. She almost made my honorable mentions on here.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, no, she's a great depiction. But obviously, I mostly saw it when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
You know, so most of my memories are from being like a horny, 15-year-old boy watching her stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, like I said, there's definitely heterosexual appeal to that, and I'm not gonna lie, it's definitely a factor. But there's other features I like more about it. So,
yeah, yeah, it's kind of like what was it, Vampiros Lesbos, from oh my God, who is it?
Jess Franco, Franco,
Yes,
Franco.
yes, like that was definitely like I remember being a teenage boy and seeing that, and it was like if you would ask me when I was 15, she would be number one.
Yeah,
you
would have
know,
been. I would have. Yeah,
so
yeah, I saw that one kind of early on, and yeah,
yeah, yeah, so
one of
but
those.
yeah,
It's like,
no.
yeah, one of those. It's like, is the door locked? One of those. Got to make sure the door is locked when you start it.
Yeah, yeah. I actually have one of those on my list from you'll know it when we get to the film.
Okay.
But it's one of those that as a teenage boy I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And then as an adult I watched it and I'm like, "Wow, I still like this character now." But my number 4, okay, so we talked about Blade before. It's going to be Deacon Frost.
Mm,
Stephen Dorff from Blade.
yeah.
Cuz he's just such I love his character. And it's one of those things that, if you read my work and kind of me, I love that kind of like rebelling again, because I come from like the punk and metal scenes and stuff. And I love that he was rebelling against the whole, how there was the whole like class divide between people who were made into vampires and people who were born into vampires. And Stephen Dorff as Deacon Frost is just awesome as far as like kind of this almost once again almost like a punk rock vampire there. And also it's one of the things I love is him even when he kills Udo Kier's character, when they're on the beach and he has the motorcycle helmet on and stuff, and just little things like that stuck with me. And I love the idea of him kind of taking down this vampire council that were all like traditionally they were born vampires and stuff, and he was made and they looked down on him and stuff. And, okay, whether he becomes a big, CGI thing of blood or whatever against Blade, that's, whatever. But he's such a great performance. And there's just this like sexy, menacing thing about Stephen Dorff as this character, and it's one of my favorite depictions of a vampire like ever.
I definitely agree. He's on my honorable mentions. Yeah, for exactly those same reasons. I love his psychotic nature, but it's
Mm-hmm.
psychotic with a purpose. Like you said, he's taking on this council and he's doing it not necessarily recklessly, but he's doing it in a way that just shows a calculating menace.
Yes.
And yeah, that touch where he's bringing the motorcycle out and he just leaves the visor up,
Yes. Yes.
and you see his eyes and you know it's him because you can tell it's Udo Kier. I love, like a little quirk like that. So
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, he made my honorable mentions. So yeah, I definitely agree. That's a good choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I love
Yeah,
Deacon Frost. Deacon Frost is one of my favorites. Obviously, he's in my top four. So.
yeah. um, my number four is probably, I would say, maybe one of the more forgotten vampire roles.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Paxton as Severin in Near Dark.
He is in my top four. I'll say that he's in my top
Nice,
three. He is in my top three.
nice.
Yes.
I I absolutely fell in love with him the second he appeared on this screen, and I didn't stop loving him until he unmercifully died.
Yes.
This is one of the greatest unhinged, psychotic, take no shit, I don't give a fuck vampires.
Yes.
I absolutely love what he does with this, and
Yes.
uh, that just iconic scene in the bar.
Oh God.
Oh,
Yeah, you spill my drink. Why don't you lick it up off the bar? Like
oh my god.
uh
And
he's in my list. He's definitely in
yeah,
my list.
I know. I mean, I think because Near Dark is just like kind of overlooked for Lost Boys, I think he kind of gets forgotten about.
Hmm.
But oh god, I just love every second he's on screen.
Yeah.
It's just such a fun time.
Yeah, exactly. Like Lance Henriksen's Jesse Hooker is in my honorable mentions because Severin is in my top three.
Nice.
I'll just say that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess we'll talk more about him when we get to my Severin entry. So number three, I know it's kind of a cheat because she's technically like an energy vampire or whatever, but Space Girl from I guess Toby Hooper's Life Force.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think this
that
was the one you were
was
mentioning.
yeah, that was another one that I was like, as a teenager, I was like, oh my god, this is so hot. And then as an adult, I watched it, and I'm like, no, this film still holds up.
It
Um,
definitely does. You know, about the film itself, I revisited it a few years ago for a podcast, and I was really surprised that even though the second half is just like a journey, kind of like a road movie,
mhm.
it's still pretty good.
Yeah,
I think the final half is a little too bombastic, and it kind of deflates it just a touch. But I definitely think it's an underrated piece. I definitely agree.
but what I kind of love about the film is that it just keeps switching genres.
Yeah.
It starts off, like an outer. I mean, if you've seen the uncut version where they go to Halley's Comet and stuff, it's kind of this outer space film and stuff, and then it becomes a vampire film, and then it becomes towards the end it's a zombie movie, and it's wonderful. And I think there's just something about Matilda May's Space Girl that it's like you can see not only the fact that she's nude like 90% of the movie, but you can see why people would be entranced by her, because it's not just her nakedness, it's also like just the personality and the power she exudes, and there's just something about her that's just amazing, and you can see why someone would be like, yeah, I would definitely give her my energy too if I was part of this astronaut crew. you know
Yeah. Yeah, I had her on my list for a lot of those reasons, but I kind of knocked her off just because she's more of an energy drainer than like a
yeah,
traditional
yeah,
bloodsucker.
yeah,
If I would have been a little bit more lax with the rules, I would have included her. But I kind of just knocked her off just because, like I said, she's more energy drainer than bloodsucker.
yeah, yeah.
So I definitely I don't have any qualms with the pick, and it's just stating my qualifications for
Oh no,
knocking her.
definitely,
Yeah,
definitely, yeah,
yeah. Like I said, if I was a little bit more lax with the rules, I would have included her because I definitely think those are. I definitely think along the same lines. You know, she does.
yeah,
You know, the pure animalistic sexuality that you're just absolutely entranced by, and carries it throughout the entire film. I definitely agree with that, but energy
exactly.
drainer over bloodsucker, I kind of made the qualifications, but that's like the only real
Yeah,
discerning qualities. Yeah.
yeah. I only included her because it's like they kind of write it away with the well, vampire legends were based on these three. So I'm like, okay, I guess that makes her a vampire then. So, all right.
Yeah.
So what's your
Yeah.
number three, Don?
So my number three is Barlow
Ah,
from. Yeah, this is where Salem's Lot comes in. We were saying earlier, just he's just so commanding and so. I want to say the term is majestic.
mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily sure if that's the proper term, but it's the one I'm using. He's just absolutely mesmerizing every time you see him, and just the feralness, the ferocity, just you know he composes himself like a king, and he just absolutely tears through anything and everything in his path. And yeah, some of it's the makeup, some of it's just the time frame, because those TV edits actually serve him well.
Yeah.
When he goes in and he goes to kill somebody, and then it cuts to commercial and you don't actually see it, but you know what's going on.
Yes.
I think that's actually one of the few times where the cut to commercial break works in its favor, because
Oh, definitely.
it works like an effective cut scene where it's like, okay, yeah, you know what's going on, but we're just gonna cut here to this next scene, like like traditional cross cuts or
Mm-hmm.
like fade
Mm-hmm.
outs or whatever. I love the way that they pull those off in some of the scenes here. So yeah, my number three is Barlow.
Yeah, no, Barlow, as I said, Barlow, I will never forget because, as a kid, that was my first experience to vampires. I grew up with my dad used to take me to all sorts of horror films. I grew up wanting to be Damien Thorne. I saw the Omen and stuff. Like, how people get that like nostalgic feel when they hear like a song from their childhood. I get that way when I hear Ave Satani. I do. I totally do. And I remember like it's all for you, Damien, and the babysitter kills herself. And I remember being a little kid thinking, why don't no one and do that for me? you know. but so Barlow was my first experience to vampires, and it was kind of like, ooh, this is
Mhm.
this is really I had heard of Dracula before, but the first vampire I saw was Barlow,
Yeah.
and it was Salem's Lot was a very interesting thing for me as like probably like a 5-year-old or something. But yeah, no, Barlow. I will not disagree with Barlow being on there. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was
Uh,
on my list too, so he was my number
exactly.
10.
Yeah.
So my
Yeah.
number 2 is going to be Eli from Let the Right One In. Um,
Hmm.
I'm going to emphasize the Swedish version, played by Lena Leandersson, um, where she's this. It's a story about this kind of outcast kid who nobody likes, and he meets this girl that he likes, and she has this kind of handler who she might be her adopted dad or whatever, named Hakan. And you kind of learn that he is kind of her like immortal slave basically, and she's this like little kid vampire trying to entice this boy Oscar into. I honestly I think the idea with Oscar is to replace Hakan.
I do too. I've
What do you
definitely.
think?
I definitely think that's the end game.
Yeah, and I get the idea Hakan was probably a little kid she met too one day, and now he's like this older man who's killing to give her victims and stuff. But
Mm.
I love Eli in Let the Right One In. I think she's just there's just something. I think a lot of films of child vampires. You have Kirsten Dunst into with the vampire and stuff, but Eli, I think there's just something so pure about her. And that's what makes her more, and for a little kid who is dealing with bullies and dealing with all sorts of, like, the scene where he's bullied in the pool
Mm.
and the body parts and blood just coming in under the water, like, because she's like killing his bullies, is just amazing.
Mm.
um I can't say enough good things about. I've only seen the American remake like once, and I don't remember anything about it. But with who is it? Chloe.
Chloe
What's
Grace
her face?
Moretz. Chloe
Yes, she
Grace. Yeah.
was. Yeah, yeah, she was in the remake, but the original Swedish version with Lena Leandersson just stuck with me so much, and it came at a time when I was very tired of vampire films. And I remember seeing it and just being like, whoa, that's such a great depiction of a vampire.
Mm. Yeah, you're not gonna give me any kind of honorable mentions left because this is the third one you. I'm not gonna have any honorable mentions left. You can have the third one. Yeah, this is my honorable mention. I'm gonna have to go back and remember what my other 15 were. I agree. This is absolutely an amazing film. I love the relationship, but I love it because it's non-vampiric, which kind of just dragged her off the list for me. Just
Yeah.
because she doesn't really display the outwardly vampire notions until the end, when she
Yes.
reveals herself and then she goes crazy and kills them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of really where she like displays her vampiric nature the most. So
Hmm.
it's kind of one where I was like, okay, well these others are like more overtly vampiric the entire way through.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what knocked her off. But in terms of like a general performance, I cannot disagree. It's heartfelt, it's emotional, it's realistic, it's genuine. You really feel for them, and you really
Oh,
care.
definitely.
You care about them, and you definitely get a sense that if she's playing him for the long game, she's definitely mastered the art of it because it's so subtle. But I definitely see. I definitely agree that the end game is for Oscar to be the replacement.
Yes. Yes.
I definitely think that's the end game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's
Uh,
your number two?
so my number two is another one that you mentioned. This is the Vampires in 30 Days of Night. Um,
Mm. Mm.
I specifically mentioned the group, but I will point out Marlowe as the lead. Just ferocious, animalistic, to the point, just absolutely bloodthirsty.
Yeah.
And I love that about vampires. I that's like the preferred way I like it. Treating human beings as meat bags, essentially.
Hmm.
You know,
They also have my favorite vampire teeth, by the way, too.
exactly. I love that look too. That ashen face with the black eye, the contacts, and then
Hmm.
you stick those teeth on there. Ugh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that is a fantastic look. I'm not sure how close it is to the graphic novel. Um,
So crazy thing about the graphic novel. They actually did a crossover with the X-Files once, and I remember just being disappointed by that because I'm like, well, they're not going to kill Mulder and Scully, so what's the point?
oh, so they're just investigating like a 30 days of
Yeah,
murder, and
yeah,
then okay, yeah, that makes sense.
but I'm just like, but that kills the whole point of it. Like these vampires are vicious.
Right.
No one should be able to survive these vampires except for the few people, who,
It takes
Evan
becoming
and stuff.
it,
Yeah.
it takes becoming one of them to actually stop them.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that, like, I'm like, okay, well, Mulder and Scully are obviously not going to be killed by them. They're not going to be turned by them. So, in the comics, they did a crossover, and I was just like, I mean, it's an idea, but you can't
Yeah.
vampirize Mulder and Scully, so it's not going to work.
Yeah. All right. So, unfortunately, I think that kind of leaves your number one
Yeah, you've
already.
already mentioned. You've
I
already
think it
mentioned
kind of,
it was
yeah,
Severin from Near
never mind.
Dark. Because
Yeah, unfortunately,
man,
yeah, that's
Severin is amazing. There is
yeah,
nothing bad I can say about Severin. Severin, Bill Paxton, just his performance of just this utter psychopath as a vampire is just unbelievable. Um,
uh,
the bar scene, as I said, that you mentioned already, is just great. Literally the only problem I have with the movie is I don't like when vampires have a cure. I don't
yeah,
like when you're able to not be a vampire. But no, he
yeah.
is. Severin is absolutely my favorite performance of a vampire ever in anything.
Yeah.
And there's nothing bad I can say about that. I mean, my honorable mentions. I have Salma Hayek as Satanico Pandemonium and From Dusk Till Dawn, which I don't like that movie, but I love her in that. I even like Tilda Swinton and Tom Hiddleston in Only Lovers Left Alive. Um, but
I still
man,
need to see that. I've heard conflicting things about it, but I still need to see that.
it's a movie that like I couldn't put in my top 10 vampires, but as far as my honorable mentions, it definitely gets in there.
Hmm,
Um,
all right.
but even some of the performances in Interview with the Vampire I thought were really great. But Severin is undisputed my number one favorite. It was kind of like one of my big influences when I did Teresa and Allison. Uh, just the kind of idea of vampires as just these psychotic predators. Especially like the whole thought of like I love when he's just drinking the bar scene is my favorite scene from the film, and you've already mentioned it, but my God, him him grabbing the guy, grabbing Caleb, and Caleb getting punched in the face and stuff, and like, yeah, I want to hit him a couple more times. I want to show the boss something. But I mean, I can't. My honorable mention obviously is Jesse Hooker from Lance Henriksen from Near Dark.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
Because he's also great in this film, but Bill Paxton steals the friggin' show. There's no dispute about Bill Paxton as Severin as my number one favorite vampire in Catherine Bigelow's Near Dark.
Yeah. That. I mean, he's on my list. He's no disagreement there. My number one is Christopher Lee as Dracula in the original horror of Dracula.
Mm, mm.
Yeah. This is actually my favorite vampire film of all time.
Really,
So
really.
yeah. This was an easy one for me. Just like I said, it's all about just that stately, calculated menace. You
Mm-hmm.
know that the first time you see him, and this is that's the one scene that made the impression on me. He barges into this room where one of the vampire brides is about to kill someone, and he barges into the room, fangs bared, bloodshot eyes, just hissing. And the other vampire just backs away, and you just, without even knowing anything, just the fact that her face turns completely frozen in fear, backs away, and just runs the other way out of the room.
Yeah.
Without even saying anything, this is a guy you cannot screw with.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
But the fact that, he actually has lines, and you have that just fantastic baritone that only Christopher Lee has, and
Oh
they,
man, yeah.
they just sound they're just so imposing, and it's menacing and creepy, and
Yeah, I've never seen Christopher Lee in something that he didn't elevate.
yeah. Well, Howling too, but
Oh yeah, no, I forgot about Howling 2. Sorry about
yeah,
that. Howling 2, I always thought was like a vampire script that someone crossed out vampires and wrote werewolf in.
I can kind of agree. I can kind of see that.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
even like the weird lore and stuff, it's like I've never heard if you kill the head werewolf, it stops the other werewolves. I've never heard that
Yeah,
before.
yeah,
But
that was a weird.
vampires, I hear it all the time.
Yeah, that
So
was a
it's,
weird. Yeah, because you always want to like you kill the head one, it stops the virus from spreading or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll say there was a character that didn't. I was kind of like I almost put Lady Sylvia from Lair of the White Worm, but she's not really a vampire, even though she keeps getting lumped into vampires.
yeah, that
Uh,
was a weird one for me. I was debating that one myself,
yeah,
but yeah, the lore makes her out more as demon than vampire.
exactly, exactly. It's kind of the thing where like I remembered it as a vampire film, but upon reviewing it, I was like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
she's more an immortal priestess to a snake god
yeah,
than anything.
yeah. Like I said, that one I always got demon lore, or as you say, like demon priestess.
Yeah,
That maybe yeah, she has the fangs down and the aversion to sunlight, but not necessarily enough. Um,
exactly.
but yeah, well, I mean, you nabbed all my honorable mentions, but the one that I have left is Willem Dafoe as Max Schreck in Shadow of the Vampire.
I almost listed that in my honorable mentions. I almost did.
Yeah,
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 he was great in that. But Willem Dafoe is another person that I think is
yeah.
even in movies I don't like. Like I'm not a Boondock Saints fan, but I would watch his scenes again. Willem
Uh,
Dafoe is especially my
he was the
first
only
experience.
he was the only reason why I watched Speed 2.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like Willem Dafoe. Personally, my favorite Willem Dafoe is Bobby Peru in Wild at Heart from David Lynch. Um, but if you haven't seen that, I definitely recommend just for Willem Dafoe because Willem Dafoe is a fucking treasure as far
Mm,
as acting goes. But yeah, no, I almost listed him in that.
yeah, definitely. I'm not the biggest fan. That's kind of why I left the film out because I don't really like the film that much. But he's
Yeah.
definitely a big factor. I mean, like I said, you also mentioned Deacon Frost. You also
Mm-hmm.
mentioned Valak from Vampires. From
Mm-hmm.
those were the other ones that I had mentioned. Let the Right One In was on there. So
Yeah. Yeah, no.
yeah,
I mean that's the thing is like I said, it was very interesting because it wasn't
yeah,
like vampire films would have been a very different list.
exactly. Yeah,
Um,
that's
you
I.
know,
Yeah, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of some of those actually that I have
yeah.
on my list.
Yeah,
But the
yeah.
fact
Like
that
I've said I don't like John Carpenter's vampires. I think it's John Carpenter's worst film. But Valak is on my list.
exactly, yeah. So I think this was a fun way to go about it. So
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. As I said, I figured it would be either vampire things or it'd be New York things, and I'd be talking about Basket Case and Maniac.
well,
Um, you
well,
know,
so between you and me, I'm really not the biggest fan of those kinds of those films. So
yeah.
that's why I went with vampires.
Yeah, yeah. I figured, like I said, one of the
Yeah,
two, because it's like, oh,
yeah,
I'm a New York City, I'm known for being a New York City, modern filmmaker and stuff. And I did Teresa and Allison, which, by the way, will be on DVD and Blu-ray on March 2nd, for anyone who wants to pick that up. But so I figured it would be one of the two, and I figured I would
yeah,
be speaking about either vampire films or I'd be, William Friedkin,
yeah.
but but yeah, no, but thanks for having me on. By the way, Chelsea says hi, and she definitely is going to contact you about doing
Oh,
some of these.
awesome.
Uh,
Yeah, I'd love to have her.
yeah.
So before we leave, go run through your list. Let's let our listeners know where to find you, your work, and
All right.
all your stuff.
All right. Well, I am Charles D. Lincoln. You can find me on Instagram at charles.d.lincoln. And I am the writer and producer of Teresa and Allison, which is kind of our extreme vampire film. The original idea for it was someone said to me, "Oh, man, you should make a lesbian vampire film." And I was like, that's the dumbest fucking idea ever. Why would I do that? Because I was just so used to like Vampire Diaries and Twilight and all these other things that made me hate the vampire genre. And then I kind of thought, well, I used to love vampire films. Let me kind of, do a throwback to Near Dark and and other films like that, and kind of make vampires predators and stuff again, with Teresa and Allison. So you can find that. It's going to be on DVD on March 2nd, DVD and Blu-ray, from Burning Bulb Distribution Publishing, whatever that particular branch is called. And you can also find 21st Century Demon Hunter on Amazon Prime Video, which is a web series that I wrote and directed. I'm also in the process of directing a film. I would describe it as Silent Hill meets Requiem for a Dream meets Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, called Bishop's Cove. And I'm just starting now on a project called Nowhere Fast, which we'll be talking about as time goes on.
Awesome. And I will definitely make sure to link the home pages for all that stuff in the show notes for you all down below for you to check out. And as a personal note, I am a big fan of Teresa and Allison. I definitely
Thank
appreciate
you.
the opportunity to see it. It was a fun time. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you. It was, oh my God, it was, I'll be the first to say, it was not a pleasant experience making, but it was, I watched and to me, that's important, that I can watch a film and be like, oh, I enjoy this as just a viewer too.
Yeah.
It really, to me, it was trying to reclaim a lot of things about vampire films that I think we lost with, like, films like Twilight and stuff like that, that kind of
Yeah.
worked really hard to kind of take all the, no pun intended, but bite out of vampire films. We really tried to make vampires predators again, and I think that was something that I'm glad that we succeeded in, and I'm glad that people enjoy the film.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, we will leave it here for now. But thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next time.
All right, thanks for having me on, and thanks to everyone for listening to Don's podcast. Keep listening, because, as I said, I heard stuff that I had never heard of before, and I'm looking forward to checking out. And hopefully, there's a film or two you heard on this that you'll be like, hey, I want to check that out. So
Hmm.
hopefully, you'll check it out, and have a check out Teresa and Allison and Demon Hunter. And thanks for listening.